I was lingering by the kitchen window one humid July evening, lost in the soft hush of cicadas singing in the distance. The day's heat had gently settled over our small town, creating a slightly suffocating blanket of warmth that made everything feel languid and slow. My house, usually so lively with friends popping by and conversation filling the living room, was unusually still. I had finished dinner not long ago, and the faint scent of garlic and herbs still hovered in the air. The television murmured quietly from across the room, running an old talk show that I barely paid attention to. The only light apart from the flickering TV glow came from a small lamp in the corner, casting a warm circle on the hardwood floor. I was rinsing the last plate in the sink when I heard a knock on the front door. At first, I thought it might be the mail carrier or perhaps a neighbor dropping by, but it was already well into the evening, and most people in our neighborhood had turned in early, seeking relief from the sweltering heat behind their closed doors and drawn blinds. My mind flicked through a few possibilities: an unexpected package, a lost traveler, but nothing quite fit the hour. When I went to answer, I found Tyler standing on my porch. Tyler, the neighbor's son, though calling him that felt strange now that he was 24. He wasn't the lanky teen I remembered passing on my sidewalk years ago, riding his bike or rushing off to high school. Instead, he was tall and broad-shouldered, his hair damp from the sticky heat. A thin, nearly invisible layer of perspiration gave his face a slight shine in the porch light. His eyes had a hesitant warmth to them. "Hey, Mrs. Green," he said quietly, as though not wanting to disturb the hush of night. "I'm really sorry to bother you so late. I was wondering if could you maybe give me a ride somewhere." His voice, baritone and earnest, made me pause. I glanced down at myself, an old t-shirt with fraying edges, loose pajama pants, comfortable but hardly presentable for a late-night drive. Yet his expression was so genuine, so grateful for even the possibility of help that I found myself nodding before I'd really thought it through. "Tyler, you don't have to apologize," I said, stepping aside to let the warm porch light illuminate him fully. "I'm not asleep yet, so sure I can drive you. Where do you need to go?" He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath. "Just across town. My car's battery died, and I can't get it started. Mom's already asleep and I left my wallet at home and can't call a cab." He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, sheepish, as if it were somehow his fault that his car had chosen that evening to break down. "No worries," I said with a soft laugh that bellied the flutter in my chest nest. I might have felt more put out on a different day, but Tyler had always struck me as a polite young man, easy to speak with, and though I was more than twice his age, I never sensed any awkwardness from him. Until tonight, something new flickered behind his eyes, something I couldn't quite name. "I'll just go change into something more appropriate," I murmured. "Give me 5 minutes." He nodded quickly, a spark of relief brightening his face. "Sure, of course." "Thank you so much, Mrs. Green. I appreciate it, really." I slipped inside, heart unexpectedly fluttering, and found myself in my bedroom, rummaging for jeans and a comfortable blouse, trying not to overthink the simple gesture of a neighbor giving another neighbor a ride. In the mirror, I saw how my cheeks looked warmer than usual, but maybe that was just the summer heat. 15 minutes later, we were on the road. I drove my small sedan through the dimly lit streets of our town, the overhead lamps offering scattered pools of gold that lit up Tyler's face every time we passed beneath one. The cicadas buzzed outside in the thick night, My car's air conditioning rattled as it struggled to keep up, and the subtle fragrance of lavender from the air freshener did its best to mask the oppressive humidity. "So headlights got left on?" I asked, trying to keep the conversation casual. Tyler nodded with a little groan. "Yeah, I guess it's my fault. I was in a hurry heading in and out of the car, and next thing I knew the battery was toast." "It happens," I said with a light chuckle. "Don't be too hard on yourself. We've all done it." He laughed softly, and for a moment the tension I'd perceived lifted. The radio hummed low, playing some old blues track that somehow fit the hush of the night. The space between us felt intimate in a way I couldn't call feeling with him before. In my younger years, I might have written it off as a flight of fancy, but now I recognized how my pulse quickened, how my stomach did. A small involuntary flip. It was unsettling, and I resolved not to think too deeply about it. We fell into an easy silence, broken only by the soft chords of the blues guitar. Then Tyler spoke, voice lowered, as though confiding a secret. "Time goes so fast," he said, gazing out the window. "I still feel like I should be in high school or taking those boring classes in college. Suddenly, I'm here living on my own, juggling 2 part-time jobs, trying to save for something bigger. Feels like I'm behind." I glanced at him with gentle sympathy. "Oh, I know that feeling all too well. I thought my 20s would be all the time in the world to figure things out. But you look back and realize entire years have vanished while you were waiting for the right moment." He turned toward me, and in that moment one of the passing streetlights lit up his face. He looked older than I remembered. The boyish grin I was used to was replaced by a thoughtful, even earnest expression. "You ever regret how fast it all goes?" he asked. I paused, letting the question swirl in my mind. "Yes," I admitted, "I do sometimes. I look back and wish I'd been braver or made different choices. But we do what we can with what we know at the time." He nodded, and for a fraction of a second, his gaze wandered from the dash to me. I felt self-conscious and strangely flattered. We kept talking as we weaved through the dark streets, about lost opportunities, about how we each once had big dreams that somehow got tucked away under life's responsibilities. He mentioned wanting to travel, to see more of the world, to experience things he had only watched in documentaries or read in magazines. I reminisced about my own younger days, feeling for the first time that I was sharing these old stories with someone who truly wanted to listen. By the time we arrived at his destination, a modest apartment complex at the far edge of town, a gentle hush had fallen again. My heart thrummed with something indescribable. I pulled up to the curb, put the car in park, and turned to say good night, but Tyler hesitated, his hand on the door handle. "Mrs. Green," he started, and his voice rough. He didn't finish, though. Maybe he couldn't find the right words. "Yes," I prodded gently, my own breath catching. He looked at me for a stretched-out moment, 1,000 unspoken thoughts swirling in the tension between us. Then he swallowed, almost as though letting something go. "Never mind," he said softly. "Thanks again for the ride." Before I could respond, he stepped out into the night. I felt an inexplicable tug as he disappeared into the building. I watched his tall silhouette fade, and once he was gone, I let out of breath. I hadn't realized I'd been holding the drive back home was a blur of near empty roads and endless thoughts. My mind ran in circles as I tried to decode the look in Tyler's eyes, the warmth in his voice. I barely slept each time I closed my eyes. I remembered the subdued lamplight flickering across his face in the car. He was no boy, he was a man. a confident presence, but with a core of vulnerability that made him compelling. I kept reminding myself that I was 30 years older and had known him since he was a kid tinkering with skateboards on the sidewalk, yet I couldn't deny this new charge. In the air, it felt taboo, but it also felt exhilarating, reminding me that I was still very much alive. The next morning routine anchored me, coffee brewed in the kitchen. I wandered the perimeter of my small backyard, surveying flowers that drooped from the heat, and I tried to maintain my composure to push away the persistent echo of Tyler's gaze. I told myself that perhaps I'd merely been starved for connection, that I was projecting feelings onto a simple neighborly favor. I certainly didn't expect to see him so soon. Around noon, just as I was finishing up some housework, I heard another knock. My heart jumped traitorously, approaching the door. I wished I'd at least run a brush through my hair, maybe changed out of my worn shorts and tank top, but I opened it anyway, forcing calm onto my features. There he stood, wearing a fitted gray t-shirt and jeans that showed hints of his lean physique. The sun highlighted the lines of his arms, and a faint flush rose in my cheeks at the sight of him. "Hi," he said, voice more subdued than last night. "Sorry to drop by unannounced again. I just wanted to thank you properly for the ride." I tried to compose myself, arms folding across my chest in a half-defensive, half-comfortable posture. "You don't have to keep thanking me, Tyler. It was just a quick trip across town." He held up a small brown paper bag. "I brought pastries," he explained, "from that cafe on Main Street. I remembered you said you love their croissants. It's not much, but I wanted to do something." His thoughtfulness took me off guard. "That's really sweet," I said quietly. I reached out and our fingers brushed lightly as he handed me the bag. Even that small contact made my pulse skip. "Come in, I'll make coffee." He hesitated, then stepped over the threshold. His gaze flicked around my living room as though memorizing every detail. We settled at the small table in my kitchen nook, the smell of coffee mingling with the buttery, flaky scent of the pastries. We unwrapped them together, not quite meeting each other's eyes, so I ventured after a moment. "How's your car situation?" He chuckled wryly. "I'm getting a new battery this afternoon. Lesson learned. I'll be more careful." Silence stretched out, heavy and significant, until he took a breath and set his coffee cup down. "Look," he said carefully, "last night when we were driving, I felt like there was something I couldn't quite say, but I also felt like you knew anyway." My chest tightened. "Tyler," I started, unsure of how I wanted that sentence to end. "You seem different to me," he continued. "I don't know if it's because I've finally grown up, or you've changed, or maybe something was always there and we never really noticed it, but I can't shake it, and I don't know if that freaks you out, but it's there for me." I inhaled slowly, trying to organize the S swirling in my brain. In truth, I was deeply flattered, but also worried about what lines might be crossed. "It doesn't freak me out," I said softly, "but I don't think either of us expected to feel, well, anything like this." He gave a small shake of his head. "No, I sure didn't expect it, but here we are. You're a grown man," I said in a measured voice. "I'm 52, that's not a small difference." He didn't flinch. "I know your age, it doesn't matter. To me, it's never mattered." A rush of warmth spilled into my chest, and I couldn't hold his gaze anymore. I had to look away because the intensity I found there was overwhelming. "It's complicated." I said. "It doesn't have to be," he murmured. "Not if we don't want it to be. We're both adults." I swallowed, nodding, almost imperceptibly. My heart pounded. Maybe we should have left it at that, an acknowledgement of an unnamed feeling, a quietly dangerous spark, Perhaps that would have been the wise route. Instead, we found ourselves speaking in half sentences about all the ways our lives had changed. How, ironically, we lived next door, but rarely spoke longer than a neighborly hello. Until now, the conversation had a confessional quality, like we were each compelled to bear some vulnerable piece of ourselves at some point. I lightly covered his hand with mine. "I appreciate the pastries," I said, my voice catching. "I appreciate you coming over, but this is all so sudden. Let me catch my breath." He turned his hand, lacing his fingers with mine. I felt the warmth of his palm, calloused in places, and my heart gave a quick jolt. We both froze, caught in that precarious moment. Then slowly I pulled my hand away, though not angrily, more like I was preventing myself from diving off a cliff. I wasn't sure. I was ready to leap from. He nodded in understanding, stood and whispered, "Thanks for letting me in. I'll see you around." His voice sounded both hopeful and uncertain. Of course. I managed standing too quickly. I nearly collided with him, and for the briefest second, we hovered inches apart, close enough for me to feel his breath drift a sea across my cheek. Then he stepped away, and by the time I shut the door behind him, I realized my hands were trembling. That night, I tossed and turned in bed, my thoughts tangled. Memories of the gentle heat that radiated from Tyler, how his eyes seemed to linger on mine, played on a loop. It shouldn't have been possible for me to feel so drawn to him. I was used to living alone, used to the quiet rhythms of my days, yet he had stirred something in me, a reminder that life could still surprise and unsettle that I hadn't experienced. Every delight the world had to offer. The days that followed were a slow, simmering build of tension. We'd catch glimpses of each other in our respective yards. He'd wave across the driveway, ask how my day was going. A few times I saw him working on his car or hauling groceries from the trunk. Each time he'd glance over, our eyes meeting for a second too long, a silent question hanging in the air. In those moments, I felt more alive than I had in years. One afternoon, not long after our charged conversation in my kitchen, I was watering the roses along the front walkway. The sun was merciless, beating down, making the pavement shimmer. My old straw hat shielded my face, but I still felt sticky sweat trickling along my temples. Over the hum of cicadas, I heard a familiar voice. "Working hard out here, huh?" Tyler called, smiling as he strolled up. He wore a plain white t-shirt that clung to his torso. In the midday heat, and a pair of worn jeans, I straightened, pulling off my hat to dab my forehead. "Someone's got to keep these flowers from wilting." He gazed at them appreciatively. "You do a great job. They're the prettiest on the block." Then more quietly, "You look tired. Let me help." I laughed, trying not to sound too anxious. "You're sweet, but I'm nearly done." He didn't push. Instead, he came closer, and we ended up chatting about inconsequential things. The best fertilizer to use, the scorching temperature, whether this heat wave would ever break. And then, as a bead of sweat trickled down my neck, his gaze followed it, and I felt a potent flush take hold of me. It struck me just how palpable the tension was. I sat down, the watering. "Can I need a break?" I murmured, heart pounding. "Iced tea inside. Want some?" He nodded. "Sure, that sounds good." Leading him into the house felt like crossing a boundary, though it wasn't the first time. But this was the first time. I let the door close behind us and locked it in a quiet gesture that we both noticed. He watched me, the corners of his mouth curving in a subtle, questioning smile. In the kitchen, I busied myself with ice, sugar, tea, lemon slice. Every move felt magnified, like we were both acutely aware of the small space that separated us. I forced myself to focus on trivial tasks, wiping condensation from the glasses, setting them on the table, brushing away imaginary specks of dust. Tyler took a seat at the same spot where he brought me pastries days earlier. He ran a hand through his hair, beads of sweat still glistening on his brow from the punishing sunlight outside. "Thanks," he said softly when I handed him his drink. His fingers touched mine again, a small spark that sent a wave of warmth up my arm. We sipped in silence for a bit, the tension swirling around us like an invisible current. Then the words spilled out. "I don't know why this is happening now," I whispered, barely able to look at him. "You're so young. You could have anyone you want." "I don't want anyone," he replied calmly. I want," he exhaled, eyes locked on mine. "I want to figure out if what I'm feeling is real or if it's just the excitement of something unexpected, but I can't shake it, and honestly, I don't want to." My throat felt tight. I tried to speak, but only managed to shaky exhale. Tyler's hand slid across the table when our fingers entwined. I couldn't move away. The sense of inevitability terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. He got up, stepping around the corner of the table, pausing just before me. We were face to face, the slow swirl of the ceiling fan stirring the air overhead. My heart hammered so loud I wondered if he could hear it. His eyes searched mine, requesting permission, giving me the choice to close the gap or end this delicate dance. I should have said something, anything. I should have pushed him away, gently told him that I was too old for him, or that we lived next door and things could get messy. But none of those words formed. Instead, I found myself rising from my chair, bridging the distance between us. In a breath of time I might never forget, then his lips were on mine, warm and firm, tasting of sweet iced tea and the lingering salt of perspiration. It was a tentative kiss, at first an exploration between two people trying to understand how they fit together, but in that moment, the years between us dissolved, overshadowed by the need to feel alive, to claim this spark of connection in a life that had grown too quiet. I pulled back, shaking Tyler. This is he cradled my cheek, eyes full of concern. "We don't have to do anything you don't want," he said, voice gentle, but I knew what I wanted. I'd spent so many nights in an empty bed, so many days walking through the motions. Here was a man who looked at me like I was prious, like I was desirable and worth the risk. The old me might have hesitated longer, but something in me refused to let this opportunity pass by. I led him through the living room, each step humming with anticipation. My mind whirled. Was I really doing this? Was I ready for whatever consequences might come? But the moment we reached my bedroom, the hush in the hallway felt sacred. I shut the door behind us, listening to the soft click of the latch. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, revealing floating specks of dust in the golden glow. My bed was made, covers smoothed, but as Tyler's arms slipped around my waist, I realized how that might soon change. He was gentle at first, fingers trailing up my back, coaxing a soft exhale from my lips. My own hands, so used to being idle, found his shoulders, then ran down to feel the lean muscle of his arms. "You're beautiful," he murmured. The simplicity of his words made my heart stutter. I couldn't remember the last time someone said that to me, looking straight into my eyes without a hint of doubt. We kissed again, deeper this time. I tasted his warmth, felt the heat of his body press closer when his palms rested on my hips. A quiet, involuntary gasp escaped me, a pulse of longing I'd forgotten I could feel came rushing back my body. Waking up to the thrill of being wanted, he leaned back to study my face. "Are you sure?" he asked. It touched me that he would check, that he recognized the significance of what was unfolding. "I'm sure," I whispered, swallowing my lingering fears. "Everything blurred after that in a sweet haze of discovery, carefully, with a tender eagerness. We let our barriers slip away. The air conditioner in the window unit chugged valiantly, blowing faintly cool air across flushed skin. His kisses burned a slow path down my neck, and my nails traced the contours of his back. We moved slowly, at first overwhelmed by the surreal reality of the moment, but gradually yielding to the urgency of our mutual desire. There was no clock ticking, no world demanding anything from us in those minutes. All that mattered were the soft gasps that escaped our lips and the quiet moans that filled the small spaces between kisses. I was aware of every inch of my body in a way I hadn't been for years, rediscovering what it meant to share it with someone who genuinely longed for me. We sank onto the bed sheets, rustling under us. My mind threatened to cloud with worry. How could this last? What would the neighbors say? What about my own internal judgments? But I pushed those thoughts aside when Tyler's voice, husky with tenderness, broke through. "You feel so perfect," he whispered, breath mingling with mine. "I've dreamed about something like this." His confession stunned me, yet it also swept away the last of my reservations. I couldn't recall the last time I'd felt so cherished. Our laughter mingled with the sighs of pleasure as we took our time, each exploring the other's body with a reverence that transcended mere attraction. Every brush of skin, every entangled moment felt like a promise that we were stepping into uncharted territory together. When at last the waves of shared intensity subsided, we lay entangled, hearts beating in unison, the sheets damp from the humid day and our own exertion. My hair clung to my temples, and Tyler's brow was glistening as he propped himself up, gazing at me with an expression I could only describe as wonder. I felt an answering swell of emotion. The experience was not just physical, it had broken down some emotional barrier within me. I realized I was smiling, albeit shakily. I brushed a few strands of hair off his forehead. "You okay?" I asked, voice quivering slightly. He nodded, more than okay. "Are you?" I let out a soft laugh, a mixture of nerves and exhilaration. "Yes." Surprised, nervous, happy. He grinned, leaning in to place a gentle kiss on the tip of my nose. "Surprised, nervous, and happy sounds about right." For a while, neither of us moved. The only sounds were the hum of the air conditioner and our still labored breathing. Eventually, my practical side nudged me, reminding me that we couldn't stay locked in this bedroom forever. The thought made me flush, torn between wanting to hide in this cocoon of warmth and facing the real world beyond that door. Tyler sensed my shift in mood. "Hey," he said quietly, "whatever comes next, we'll figure it out. I'm not running away." I rolled onto my side, facing him in the gentle sunlight. I could see a faint scar above his left eyebrow, some relic from his childhood, probably. "I'm not running either," I promised, sliding my hand over his, our fingers interlaced, sealing some quiet pact. Eventually, I stood, slipping into a robe I kept hanging by the closet. He pulled on his jeans and shirt, his movements unhurried, as though there was nothing urgent in the outside world. A faint pang of reality struck me as I wondered how quickly the gossip might spread. If anyone glimpsed him leaving my house, then again I thought it was hardly any of their business. We ventured back into the kitchen, though. It felt entirely different now. The tension was still there, but it was interwoven with a new closeness, a sense that we had shared something profound. I made more iced tea. It seemed to be all I could think of to ground myself, and we sipped it while leaning against the counter. My legs were unsteady, not just from the heat or the intimacy we'd shared, but from the avalanche of uncharted emotions. He brushed a stray hair off my forehead. "You're amazing," he murmured, his gaze told me he meant it. Warmth stole through me again, and I had to break eye contact, focusing on the pattern of swirling ice cubes in my glass. "I feel like I've crossed a line I never knew I wanted to cross," I admitted, voice trembling with honesty. "But now I'm glad I did." He set his glass down, placing a hand gently on my shoulder. "Me too," he said. "Look, if we're going to do this, whatever this is, I don't want you to worry. I'm not going to disappear. I really do care about you." My lips quirked in a small shy smile. "I appreciate that," I said softly. "Just let him take it one step at a time." He nodded, relief evident in his eyes. After a moment, he leaned in, pressing a tender kiss to my cheek. I closed my eyes at the featherlight feeling of it, overcome with gratitude for the sense of possibility blossoming in my life. Where it would lead, I had no idea, but I wanted to find out. Tyler didn't stay much longer. We both recognized the need to catch our breath to process. We walked to the door, and he paused to give me one last lingering kiss, one that made my heart flutter as fiercely as it had the first time. Then he headed out, leaving me with a swirl of hope and trepidation. I locked the door behind him, leaning against it with a shaky exhale. In the days and weeks that followed, we navigated an unsteady dance. I was keenly aware of how to present myself when watering the plants outside or bringing groceries in. Sometimes he'd come by under the pretense of helping with a household task. Other times under the guise of asking for advice on a recipe, anything to justify being alone together. Yet each encounter crackled with anticipation. We'd steal kisses in the hallway, talk late into the night on my couch, or share plates of pasta in the soft glow of the kitchen lights, our knees brushing under the table like smitten teenagers. When we felt bold enough, we'd spend hours wrapped in my sheets, exploring the contours of each other's lives and bodies, weaving stories about our pasts. He confessed that he had once harbored a crush on me when he was in college, but never voiced it, thinking I'd dismiss him as just a kid. He spoke of traveling, of wanting to see countries he'd only read about, and I told him how I'd always dreamed of painting landscapes in Provence, but never found the time or courage to go. We formed a bond that was equal parts friendship, passion, and discovery. It felt forbidden in the eyes of some unspoken rule, yet perfectly natural in the quiet moments we shared. Some nights we'd lay awake, my head on his chest, listening to the beat of his heart. I'd try to articulate my concerns about the rumors or the potential disapproval from neighbors and acquaintances. Tyler would hold me closer, remind me that people would always talk, that we couldn't let them dictate our happiness. He was fearless about it in a way that both comforted and frightened me. There were still times I'd watch him sleep, face soft and unguarded, and a flutter of insecurity would grip my chest. 24, such a bright open future ahead of him. Could I really be part of that future, or was I merely a fleeting curiosity? The question gnawed at me, though I never spoke it aloud. Whenever my anxieties threatened to overwhelm me, he'd seem to sense it, pulling me into his arms, whispering gentle reassurances. Our private world expanded beyond my house. One lazy afternoon we took a drive along the state highway, windows down, letting the warm wind rush in the farmland, stretched out in rolling waves of green and gold on either side, and we talked about everything and nothing, letting the hum of tires on asphalt lull us into that comfortable closeness. At a roadside stand, we stopped to buy sweet corn and homemade peach jam from a local farmer. We tasted samples and laughed when Tyler accidentally smeared jam on his chin. I wiped it away, feeling that familiar surge of affection, the kind that made me wonder how I'd ever lived so many years ignoring this capacity for connection. But amid these golden, tranquil moments, reality was never too far behind. There were near encounters with people from our neighborhood, like the time we were in the grocery store, our carts nearly colliding in the baking aisle, and Mrs. Thompson from across the street spotted us talking. Tyler had quickly moved away, pretending to examine a display of pancake syrup so that she wouldn't ask questions about why he was looking at me like that, or why I was smiling the way I never usually did. The rumors did start eventually, little whispers from folks noticing Tyler's car parked in front of my house more than usual, from the occasional glimpses of us standing too close on the sidewalk. I heard the hush talk at the local diner, saw the curious looks cast our way during Sunday strolls through the neighborhood. It was disconcerting, but we had braced for it. Tyler remained staunch in his disregard for their opinions, while I, more cautious by nature, still felt pinpricks of concern. One evening, though, I found him at my door with a bouquet of wild flowers, his face set in a determined expression. "I don't want to hide," he said. "I don't want to act like there's something shameful about being around you." My chest tightened. "I just don't want things to get difficult," I admitted. "People are quick to judge, and I want to protect you." His eyes softened with understanding. He kissed my cheek, tucking the flowers into my arms. "I get it," he said quietly, "but let's promise each other that no matter what happens, we won't pretend there's nothing here, because there definitely is." From that point on, we found a delicate balance. We didn't make grand public displays of affection, but neither did we retreat into secrets. If someone saw him leaving my house late at night, so be it. If we laughed too happily at the local cafe, that was our business. Over time, those who gossiped either grew bored or at least had the decency to keep their judgments to themselves. It helped that my closest friend, Sandra, had offered her unwavering support when I first confided in her, telling me that after all these lonely years, I deserved a shot at joy no matter what shape it took. As the weeks turned into months, something deeper settled between Tyler and me. It wasn't just lust. We cooked meals together, washed dishes side by side, sang off key to old hits on the radio. He helped me reorganize my attic, carrying boxes down the rickety steps while I sorted through old photo albums I hadn't opened in years. Sometimes he'd surprise me with coffee in the morning, or I'd surprise him with a picnic lunch to break up his long work day. We learned each other's quirks, how I liked to unwind with a glass of red wine at dusk, how he played guitar in secret, too shy to perform in front of an audience. We discovered new intimacies beyond the bedroom, like the comfort of napping together on the couch, bodies curved into each other, or the quiet thrill of reading side by side, occasionally bumping shoulders. Yet we never lost that spark of passion, that undercurrent that made the simplest closeness pulse with possibility. There were nights when the tension would flare, and we'd find ourselves tangled in sheets, Once more, the gentle hush of the town outside our window reminding us that we were carving out our own world, one that existed in the spaces where we allowed ourselves to be fearless. One particularly sultry evening, a fierce thunderstorm pounded on the roof, lightning lit up the sky, and the wind lashed the trees outside. The power flickered, plunging the house into momentary darkness. I gasped, a reflex I'd never quite shaken off from childhood. Tyler was beside me, in an instant, arms circling my waist. We stood by the living room window watching the storm. The intimacy was palpable, the air thick with both humidity and the weight of unspoken emotion. Lightning streaked across the horizon, followed by a crack of thunder that rattled the glass. I clutched his arm tighter. He turned to me, face illuminated by the silvery afterglow, and kissed me with such fervor it felt like an electric current passed between us. We sank onto the couch, half laughing as the thunder rattled the house, half intoxicated by the rush of adrenaline and desire. In that moment, I thought about how incredible it was that life still had surprises, that I could be so deeply connected to someone who not too long ago was just a polite neighbor's son knocking on my door for a ride. In the hush that followed the storm's peak, when the wind began to quiet and the steady patter of rain soothed the hot earth outside, we lay in each other's arms, the living room lit only by sporadic bursts of lightning. He stroked my hair, and I closed my eyes, letting the echo of thunder lull me toward drowsiness. He broke the silence with a whisper, "I'm so happy with you." My heart clenched at the simplicity of his confession. It washed away lingering doubts, overshadowed the differences in our ages, the judgments of the world. I turned to him, pressing my forehead to his. "I'm happy with you too," I murmured. So much time didn't stop. Of course, the next morning came, clouds clearing, life continuing on. He left for work at his usual time, and I tended to my modest schedule, some errands, a visit to the library, a long phone call with a friend. But beneath the ordinary routine, there was a new sense of belonging, as if I had quietly shifted from someone living alone to someone who had a partner, a confidant, a reason to smile at random moments. Days blurred into weeks, and with them we faced small trials. He had a stressful time at one of his part-time jobs when a coworker made a snide comment about him shacking up with the neighbor lady. It hit him harder than he wanted to admit. One night he arrived at my door, frustration evident in his eyes. I took his hand and let him inside, letting him vent, letting him see that I wasn't ashamed. By the end of the evening, we'd both found calm in the knowledge that this was our relationship, not the coworkers, not the town's. It bolstered us, made us more resilient. We also had quiet dinners with my friend Sandra, who took to Tyler's genuine warmth immediately. She seemed relieved to see me glowing with a confidence and joy I'd once lacked. Occasionally, she'd tease us playfully but never cry, and each time I caught Tyler's eyes shining with gratitude that we had someone in our corner. The more time we spent together, the less I worried about who saw us or what they might say. We were forging our own path, complicated but undeniably ours. Sometimes Tyler would speak about the future, casually asking if I'd ever want to travel together or move somewhere new or just see more of the state beyond our little town. Each mention of the future as a shared prospect made me tremble slightly. Could I be that bold, that free? One evening, lying in bed, I discovered an unexpected sense of certainty. His arm was wrapped around me, steady and warm, and I realized that not once since taking that leap had I truly regretted it. I'd worried, I'd stressed, I'd second guessed, but regret. Never. I turned to face him, the faint light from the street lamp outside, illuminating the room just enough to highlight the angle of his cheekbones. "Tyler," I said softly, running my fingers through his hair. "Thank you." He blinked, brows furrowing slightly for what I exhaled, a surge of emotion flooding me, for seeing me, really seeing me, not just as a lonely woman next door, not just as your neighbor, for showing me that life doesn't have to be over after a certain age, that I can still feel this alive. He brushed his lips against my forehead. "I only did what came naturally," he whispered. "You're the one who gave me a chance. I love being with you, and I'm not going anywhere." My eyes stung with tears. I didn't intend to cry, a rush of affection tightening my throat, so I couldn't respond right away. When I eventually spoke, it was almost an exhale of relief. "I'm not going anywhere either." A part of me knew we weren't guaranteed forever, but the lesson I took from this new chapter was that sometimes you have to let go of what you think is supposed to happen to embrace what's actually happening. Sometimes the unexpected spark, like a knock at the door on a humid July night, can ignite a flame that warms every corner of your life. We drifted off to sleep that night in each other's arms, the hum of cicadas coming through the open window. The air, now cooler than before summer, was well underway, autumn only a few weeks off, but I felt a sense of renewal that defied the turning of seasons. The hush of the night in our small town no longer felt lonely, it felt full of promise, and that in all its complicated, beautiful glory is how a simple ride across town turned into one of the most transformative experiences of my life. I'd never have believed it if someone told me beforehand, but life surprises don't always come neatly packaged or carefully timed. Sometimes they arrive in a rush of summer heat and the gentle knock of a neighbor's son asking for help, opening a door to a future you never saw coming and couldn't possibly live without.